Hi, Erin. This is Carlo of 4GQ TV. I have Paul, our co-host, as well. Uh, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and your involvement in the Star Trek universe?
Yeah, so I am the science advisor for the franchise. So I came on season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. So kind of right when all of these shows were coming on. It's been about 5 years now that I have worked on the entire franchise. So shows are able to use me as much or as little as they want. They all do to some extent. And I not only make sure that the science is right, but I also manage all of the Trek technology. So things like warp drive transporters and making sure that we just stay consistent across the franchise for how we talk about this stuff.
Which is good because I have a friend who is very big on they're consistent in what they do and they're consistent in what they say. And it's been that way all along. I'm like, yeah. So
Yeah,
now I can tell him I've spoken to the person who is now currently responsible for all that consistency. Yeah.
there you go. Yes, thank you. It is a role I take very seriously and definitely keeps me up at night.
So they will
So,
ask you, like, can you, if you're using a transporter, can you do this? And you go, yeah, that doesn't work that way.
Right, right, exactly. Yep, that's it.
so is there a difference between when you advise, let's say, like on the animation side versus the real action side?
Yeah, every show, animation, live action, or whatnot, they all. I'm also a heavy metal fan, so I use this analogy a lot that, like, there's a big spectrum of heavy metal out there, and there's a big spectrum of science fiction out there. And all shows, Star Trek or not, are going to fall on some level of how much science that they want to focus on. And Star Trek is no different from that. So, working on Star Trek Picard versus working on Prodigy versus working on Discovery versus Lower Decks, they all use me in different ways. Some of those little nuances are things like in Discovery, it's not just making sure that the science is right, but the characters are scientists. So, how do they approach problems? How do they
Right.
rule things out? Prodigy is not just making sure the science is right, but how do we explain it to kids? How do we make it more accessible? How do we inspire the next generation of science professionals? And so there's all little different nuances to everything that I work on. And that's kind of the first gauge that you have to make is like,
Yeah.
where am I living in the science realm?
Okay, so I have a question about that. So you're working on all the shows. They all take place different places in the Trek timeline, which means the science is at different levels. Do you have to
Correct.
keep track of that and go, well, at this point in the history, they wouldn't necessarily know that. They haven't worked their way up that far yet.
To some extent, thankfully, when it comes to timeline lore, I'm not alone, and there are plenty of Star Trek fans who work on these shows that are pretty comfortable in the realm that they're in. I would say the biggest challenge was Star Trek Discovery, which is also the same era that the new show Starfleet Academy is going to come in, because that was like a further 900 years in the future from the era that we knew. So it was kind of like, okay, how do we create the future technology? And we
Right.
had things like programmable matter and other technologies that look futuristic to the timelines that we knew that are still 400 years in the future from now.
One thing I do like is if because if you're definitely a Trek fan like me and you've grown up with and I'm older than you, I can probably guarantee that. But growing up with the old stuff, looking at it and going, wow, the stuff they showed back then, we now kind of have a version of that in real life. You know,
Yeah. And what I love about that too is that it's a very self-fulfilling prophecy, I think,
yeah,
because you have people who watched Star Trek that then become engineers and
yeah.
inventors. And I still guarantee the first generation reading e-reader devices are exactly the same size and shape as the data pads in the
The
next
original data
generation.
patch.
That is not a coincidence.
So, out of all the Star Trek universes or timelines, do you have a favorite villain?
Oh, great question. Thank you. Yes, Kai Wynn
Oh,
from
oh,
Deep Space
nice.
Nine. I love her as a villain in the sense of like she comes on the screen and my blood pressure spikes, but I also can't look away. And she is just the best evil person in all of Star Trek.
And
Q is a little
she was so sure of what she was doing. That was it too. She was so
yeah.
sure that what she was doing was the right thing. Yeah.
Oh, and she's so condescending, and she was just so good. And yeah, that Kai win,
Yeah.
1000%.
Mm.
So, do you get to have fun with the Borg?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, we talk about like all of that Star Trek technology that we deal with, and the Borg have been so established, but Janeway is my captain, and if anyone is going to take on the Borg, it's her. And so I think that's really fun. But I know you guys do a lot of video game stuff, and I got to play my character myself in Star Trek Online in a mission against the Borg. So
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
I was going to say that. So not only are you their advisor, but you've appeared in like all the shows you've worked on, I think, or a lot of them. Because I looked at your IMDb and it shows that you had a character, and they'll have your name, which I think is really cool. Or at
thank
least most
you.
of them are you, basically.
Yeah, they only myself and Stephen Hawking have played ourselves in Star Trek, so no pressure. But yeah, the Star Trek Prodigy is the picture that you have up. They were the ones who kind of animated me, and I voiced myself. And then I was referred to in Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yeah,
Jadzia Dax reached out to her friend at the Daystrom Institute that was
yeah.
me in a Star Trek comic. And then I was also voiced myself in Star Trek Online.
Which I think is hilarious because at some point they're going to start saying she is an immortal. Because being in all those shows, you're hundreds and hundreds of years old. Yeah,
Exactly. Am I a Q? Am I a
yeah,
time
that's it.
traveler? Who knows?
Do you have a favorite character from the original Star Trek?
Yes. Leonard Nimoy's Spock is probably my absolute favorite. The first little piece of Star Trek merchandise I ever bought was a Spock mug. I love it's so funny because I think with any job you start to kind of lose sight of the fun of it sometimes. And a way to ground myself is I'll go watch like my favorite Spock episodes, and I'm just reminded how good Star Trek is and
So
how
you steer away from Spock's brain, I take it. You.
yeah, that's a fun episode if you want to play a drinking game every time they say Spock's brain in that episode.
That's
Is
awesome.
there is there anything that you think that we might actually be close to technologically that comes from Star Trek that we might see in our lifetime?
Yeah, we've already checked a few boxes. I mean, the conversation we're having right now, they would have on the bridge in 1966, which seemed futuristic at the time. They had the communicators, flip phones, seem out of date now. I think the two pieces of technology that we haven't seen yet that we might get to in our lifetime are the tricorder and the replicator in different forms, but like necessity is a mother of invention. And I think like given the last few years and the need for more distanced healthcare, things like the tricorder that technology seems to be more accessible. Now, will it be a handheld device that people could own? Maybe not, but at least more passive scanning devices to be able to diagnose problems. That seems feasible technologically. And then with the replicator, we have kind of two major advances in technology happening at the same time. One is 3D printing,
Yeah.
which if you had told me 10 years ago I would own a 3D printer and it would sit on my countertop, I would have laughed at you, but I do. And that technology has just skyrocketed in addition to a lot of food research and science research into like the discovery of the protein that makes red meat taste like red meat. And that's how we started getting Impossible Burgers and Beyond
Right.
Burgers and all of those. That was a discovery, a scientific discovery that we made. And so if we're able to combine those two in the sense that you get a 3D printer that can artificially create food, now a burger might take 18 hours to make and it might taste nasty, but it's not impossible. And I think we'll get something that's like a replicator in our lifetime.
That would be really cool. I mean, and going back to the tricorder thing, I mean, look, the watches and stuff we have already do a
Yeah,
lot of the sensory stuff that the doctor would just say, okay, send over the data that your watch is picking up. And you, oh, okay, here you go. Here's what the data says. You know,
exactly. And that is, if you look at the 60s, I mean, that is so futuristic to what they had. So yeah,
yeah, that was McCoy holding a salt shaker over people, and
exactly.
So I imagine that as a Star Trek fan yourself, you probably see at different places, maybe conventions, a lot of different Star Trek cosplay. Have you ever seen a cosplay that just blew your mind on Star Trek?
Oh, that's so good. Yes, I've seen some like lookalikes where people come in as Spock or Scotty that just you completely double take. I love mashups. Going back to Kai Wynn, one of my favorite costumes I ever saw was Cobra Kai Wynn. And
That's awesome.
it's like you just have to give them a round of applause for that. It's so brilliant. Yeah, the creativity is great. I remember on my first Star Trek cruise, one of the winners at the costume contest was a Mugatu that was stuck in a Tholian web. So
Wow.
yeah, I appreciate creativity of fans. Yeah.
So you realize that if you were like dressed up like the image I have behind me, that they would probably accuse you of cosplaying that character, and you go, "No, it's really me."
I can cosplay myself now.
There you go. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. You could.
That's my work uniform. It's not cosplay.
Do you have any props from, Star Trek that you just really love? Because I'm sure there's a lot of cool props in Star Trek.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh, I mean, I have a couple that are screen used that were like over, taking up space in the Star Trek warehouse. For me, I don't own it, but I've earmarked it. But I really want a time crystal from Star Trek
Oh,
Discovery, just
nice.
because it's kind of like one of those science fiction MacGuffin things that I'm just like, oh, I just want one of those sitting on my desk.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be amazing if you were able to
Yeah,
get one
but I
for sure.
do my favorite sort of action figure thing I have, it's I can't reach it right now, but it's Tom Paris from the Threshold episode, so in
Nice.
lizard form. I have that one on my desk.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And I know this might be a hard question for you. Do you have a favorite series from Star Trek?
Ooh. Yes, it is Deep Space Nine. No offense to Janeway or Voyager, which are my favorite captain and ship respectively, but I love Deep Space Nine. Every time I stumble across an episode or have to look one up or either for a podcast or for work, I'm always like, ooh, I might be due
Yeah.
for a rewatch. Such a good show.
Okay, and follow up then. Let's do them in sections. Favorite
Okay.
original cast movies.
The Voyage Home, one with the whales. I love
Really?
that movie. It's tight, it's fun, it's funny, it's entertaining. I will sit and watch The Voyage Home any day.
Yep.
Not no shade to Wrath of Khan. And I don't think Search for Spock is as bad as the rap gets. But if I had to choose any of them to watch right now, it would be the one
Yeah.
with the whales.
Though I will say personally, growing up, I found the one with the whales was the weakest for me.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
I'm
like,
not gonna
what are they
like
doing? What are they doing? But as I've gotten older, I appreciate it more than I did then.
it's
But yeah,
pretty
Wrath of
fun.
Khan, of course, is my favorite. Okay. TNG cast.
Which of the TNG characters are my favorite?
Movie. TNG
Oh,
TNG movie.
movie. Oh, First Contact. Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
that's solid. That's a good one. I watched that like 4 days ago. I love First Contact.
Dude, that's my favorite TNG movie. Also, my second run on the original cast would be The Undiscovered Country. I love The Undiscovered Country.
That's a good one.
Um, and I think, and of the new set of movies, the Abrams movies.
Uh okay, the one I will choose is the first one. Just the straight Star Trek. I love that movie. I think the casting is perfect, the story's great. Star Trek Beyond, I don't think gets enough love. I feel like it's a big budget TOS episode, and I
Yeah,
really love it. Like it is a great, solid film. So yeah, I
yeah,
do watch Star Trek
yeah.
Beyond pretty often.
You have to get out of your head that it's supposed to be con, that it's supposed, because I think that was part of what kind of messed it up for people. There was this
Yeah.
big push of, is this going to be, the con we knew,
Mhm.
whatever, So, but yeah, so I can see that. Let's see. So we are coming up on our time real quick. So real quick, I have a question I will ask everybody we interview. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes, I am in the pineapple camp. Sorry.
Ah,
Quite proudly,
shame.
as in like I actively order it, so I can't even be diplomatic about it. I am pro pineapple on pizza.
All right. And do you have anything else coming up that we should be on the lookout for? Any projects or anything?
A lot of my projects have just come out. I encourage
Yeah.
people to watch season 2 of Prodigy on Netflix. If you've never seen Star Trek, Prodigy is a great entry point for all ages. It's a fun show. It's kind, it's wonderful. And as a Star Trek fan, it's wonderful. I also worked on the recent Amazon Prime film, Space Cadet, that's streaming right now. That's
I want to
like
check that out. Yeah.
Legally Blonde meets NASA, and it's
There you
fun
go.
and just an enjoyable film. And then I also produced a short film called Identities, which is on the streaming service Nebula, written and directed by my friend Jesse Earl, and with a guest cameo from John Delancey. So we got Q to be in our
Nice.
film. Yeah, thank
Awesome.
you.
Well,
Anytime you get to hang out with Q, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
I know we got 3 minutes left, so last question, real quick.
All right.
This there's a battle going on. The ship's going down. Who's your captain? Picard or
Okay.
Kirk?
Oh
Oh, I
no
have to
no!
choose
Oh,
between
you're
Picard or
gonna limit
Kirk?
her. You're gonna limit her. That's not cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Janeway's off the table. That's fine. It's obvious who I would choose. So if I have to choose between Kirk and Picard, honestly, I would choose Kirk.
So would
Like
I.
yeah, Kirk is a I'm not saying that Picard's not, but Kirk is a chess player. Kirk sees different opportunities and he's not going to let administrative
Yep.
uh guidance hold him back.
He will bend those rules into a pretzel. Yes, he will.
Exactly. Exactly. And it also means I get to hang out with Spock. So
There you go.
Oh, true. Yeah. Well,
I love
Uh,
it.
thank you so much, Aaron. And we're
Thanks,
looking
guys.
forward to San Diego Comic-Con. We'll be there as well. So
Oh, great.
excited. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to that. Thanks again.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.